Hey y'all, welcome back to Know What's Cooking, where we're changing the world one recipe at a time with a splash of physics. Today is day 7 of the 2022 7-day Sustainable Food Cooking Challenge. Hopefully you've come with me through this whole process. I am so grateful that you have joined me in the kitchen and come along with me on this journey. And so yeah, let's go ahead and get started. We are cooking a sweet potato, cauliflower, curry, roasted vegetable. This is going to be done in a convection oven again. I'm already preheating the oven, and also I'm preheating the pan that I'll roast the vegetables in. That'll speed up the cooking process a bit. So I can't pass up the opportunity to mention that this recipe would also work great in a solar oven. They work so well and are loaded with some great physics. I'll include some links of my solar cooking demos in the notes of this video. There's a lot of chopping of vegetables in this, which I think is really fun, right? It's really grounding to come home from whatever you did for the day and just be able to sort of spend some time in this rudimentary space of chopping vegetables. Let's start out with the potato. So we're going to use a sweet potato for this, and I'm actually going to leave the skin on to improve the nutrition even further. So first you want to give this a pretty good scrubbing since I'm going to keep the skin. All right, so this is a particularly large and hard sweet potato. I'm actually going to throw it in the microwave for just about a minute or two, and that's just going to soften it up enough where the chopping is easier. All right, let's go ahead and dice this sweet potato. All right, we just want to dice these into little cubes. Again, make sure you take your time with this. It's much easier once you get a flat surface on these potatoes, but they can be a little bit wobbly, and so you want to just make sure that you're being really safe with the knife. A couple minutes in the microwave really helped make it easier to chop. All right, we're just going to put these all in a bowl together so we can mix in all the spices. Let's do the other potato. You're welcome to substitute out any other ingredients. If you're not a huge sweet potato fan, you certainly could substitute in just a regular potato or maybe a golden potato. Okay, I'm also going to add about a half of this large onion. I'm going to leave it in some pretty large chunks. All right, we're going to add those onions to the bowl. And last is our cauliflower. Cut off this bottom green part. That will go into the compost bin and peel off these final bottom leaves. And then I'm just going to cut the base of this in half and tear it apart. And we can see the structure of this. So if we keep just kind of cutting this and then breaking it apart and then cutting again and breaking it apart, we see all these little trees start to form where we can cut them into little pieces, and just pretty much as big as you want. You do want to make sure you're getting these in pretty small pieces because you want it to be able to cook at about the same amount of time it's going to take the sweet potatoes to cook. So again, the more of this core we can throw in, the less food waste we have. And so as long as we cut that core pretty small, that main stem, it'll roast just fine. It'll be delicious. It'll soften up. Okay, the other thing I want to add in here is a clove of garlic. And so you can put garlic powder, that's fine, but I love fresh garlic. And while we can buy it in a jar, we also can reduce the transportation weight and single-use packaging by just buying it in the clove, right? It already grows kind of shelf stable. It doesn't need any further processing. I just took off a clove and I'm going to put it through a garlic press. I don't even need to peel the paper for the garlic, but I find that I can get more out if I cut it in half first. So let's do that. So I just cut it in half, and then I'm going to put it in my garlic press, cut side down. I think actually both of these pieces can fit in there. So again, we're loaded in there, cut side down, and I'm just going to squeeze it out into my mixture. Look at all that great garlic. Oh, yum. So then I'm just gonna cut that off into there. Okay, perfect. So now we just have to add the seasonings to this before we put it into the oven. And that is 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I may go a little bit more than that. I'm gonna go about 1.5 tablespoons. Perfect. To that, we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of curry powder. And also 1/2 teaspoon of turmeric. Okay, perfect. And then we just want some salt and pepper to taste. I'm gonna wait until it's spread out on the pan before I add the salt and pepper. So now I'm just gonna kind of get my hands in here and mix all these vegetables and try to distribute that oil and the curry powder and the turmeric. It is already smelling quite yummy. I love these curry flavors. I think your hand really does the best job here. Okay, I think we're pretty good. I'm just gonna go ahead and wash my hands and then spread it on the baking sheet. I'm putting the pan in the middle of the oven, but again, since we've heated up this entire oven, it's a really great time to think ahead a little bit and say, what else can you put in the oven while the oven's hot? Maybe some granola or another kind of a bread, maybe some other kind of roasted vegetables. Mushrooms are also something I love. I can saute them on the stovetop, certainly, but if I have a hot oven, I can also just have the oven do that work for me, and then I have it for some meal in the future. So again, especially in a convection oven, when we're forcing that air all around, we don't tend to get hot spots, so you can really load the oven and make good use of the energy that we've put into heating all of that volume. Okay, I'm gonna put my vegetables on here and spread them out a bit. I'm gonna roast these for about 30 minutes total, so I'm gonna set a timer for 15 minutes. I forgot to put the salt and pepper on there before I put it in the oven, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna pull it out just for a minute and sprinkle some salt and pepper on the top. Oh, already smells so good. Very excited about this. Okay, so I'm just gonna put a good sprinkling of salt across the entire top. And then also some fresh ground pepper. Deep inhale. Smells really good. And pop it back in the oven. All right, great. Perfect. So while that's roasting, we're gonna throw together the sauce. So often in cooking, the thing that makes a dish magical is the sauce. Have a couple really amazing, delicious sauces up your sleeve. This is one that's fabulous. It's a tahini-based sauce. And so tahini is ground up sesame seeds in the same way peanut butter is ground up peanuts. And so there's a lot of protein in this. In 2 tablespoons of tahini, there's 8 grams of protein. So that is one way we're adding protein to this meal. I'm actually gonna add some beans at the end also. So we always wanna try to think about if we're making a complete meal out of this, we wanna make sure we have enough protein in there, we have some form of starch, and then also some vegetables. So maybe a side dish of kale or a salad on the side of this would be a really great meal to round out this meal. Okay, we're gonna start out with 3 tablespoons of tahini. I love that squeezable tahini. It does need a good shaking when it comes out of the refrigerator because it tends to settle in the same way peanut butter settles. Okay, excellent. To that, we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice. I'm just gonna assume that's about the amount of juice I'm gonna get out of 1 lemon. This lemon is at room temperature. Note that lemons will squeeze much easier if they're at room temperature or slightly warm as compared to coming straight out of the refrigerator. All right, I'm gonna use this wooden lemon reamer to get the juice out of the lemons. So also we're thinking about what things to buy, gadgets for our kitchen. The more we can choose natural materials like wood rather than plastic. All right, we're just gonna squeeze this through this little strainer so that the seeds get caught. Okay, perfect. So to this, I'm gonna add a half of a teaspoon of curry. So I'm kind of adding back a lot of the same seasonings that was in the roasted vegetables itself. So a half a teaspoon of the curry powder, and then a quarter of a teaspoon of turmeric. I'm also gonna add in one more clove of garlic. That's gonna go into our sauce. That sounds amazing. To this, we're also gonna add a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And again, some fresh ground pepper. I almost forgot. Also, you should add a little bit of fresh ginger to this. It gives it a good tang. If you don't have fresh ginger, a little bit of ginger powder would be fine. But I'm gonna go ahead and use some fresh ginger. And I am gonna use a little grater to get about a tablespoon's worth of this ginger in the sauce. I love this microplane, and so it's a really easy way to get this. We're aiming for about a tablespoon. We can kind of eyeball this. My vegetables are ready to be stirred. I will get to that in just a moment. I get through this ginger grating. All right, I feel pretty good about, we have about a tablespoon in there. I'm gonna pause this just to give my vegetables a quick stirring. All right, they look really quite amazing already. So we have some good steam coming off of there. I'm just gonna give them a little bit of a tossing. I don't actually think these are gonna need a full another 15 minutes because the pieces are pretty small. I also see it kind of drying out a little bit, and so I'm just gonna add a thin layer, just a little splash of water in here, so it kind of helps to make a more steamy environment for the last part of the roasting. Maybe I'm only adding about a quarter of a cup, maybe a half a cup or so of water, just again to so that these don't get too terribly dried out. I'm going to shake this a little bit and try to distribute that water, and then stick it back in. I'm going to stick it back in for 10 minutes. All right, so back to our sauce. We're just going to take a little whisk, and I'm going to see how this is coming together and see if I need to add some water to it. So it seems kind of thick. I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of warm water. Again, my favorite jar, the wide mouth pint jar, works really well for whisking these sauces. It has plenty of space so you can kind of whisk without making a mess. I think that looks like a really nice consistency. So the thickness of my tahini only required that I added 2 tablespoons. If you're still struggling with getting it to be sort of maybe a pourable kind of consistency, you might want to add another tablespoon of warm water. That's all there is for the sauce. We'll set that aside to pour over the final product. All right, for the final few minutes of roasting, I'm just gonna think about the toppings. This will all get mixed together with the sauce and just be sort of a one dish meal. So I'm gonna add some garbanzo beans here. Again, we're gonna add some protein and fiber with this. Also some peas, hard to buy peas fresh. You certainly can grow them, but they are something that we typically rely on frozen. That's okay. I'm also gonna add in some fresh cilantro. Smells really amazing. It also calls for parsley. I don't have any fresh parsley with me right now, but I usually buy parsleys in a big bunch and chop it up in a food processor and keep it in the freezer. So I always have some fresh frozen parsley on the ready. So I'll add that once this comes out of the oven. And then last, I'm just gonna add in a couple of green onions. So let's go ahead and chop those. One of the reasons I love this recipe is because it has so many flavors in it. And there's actually some good evidence that shows that it's not only that you eat healthy food, but it's also that you eat a good variety of food, right? Because every kind of food brings with it its own sort of advantages. So these kind of meals where you mix a bunch of things together are a fantastic opportunity to really bring in a wide variety of flavors and tastes and also nutrition. Okay, fabulous. Meal 7 is almost in the books. The vegetables are ready to come out of the oven. We're gonna go ahead and turn the oven off. And I'm just gonna check the sweet potatoes to make sure that they're soft. Looks so fantastic. This is the base, all these delicious roasted vegetables. Yeah, I think it's perfect. Great. All right, let's just mix it all together. I'm gonna scoop these roasted vegetables. All right, great. To that, I'm gonna add some of these garbanzo beans, maybe about a half of a cup, and also maybe about a half a cup of these green frozen peas. I'm gonna dump in these 2 diced green onions. I'm gonna add in some of the cilantro, which I'm gonna use these really cool scissors for. These perfect little strips of cilantro. I'm gonna add in there. All right, so here is the parsley that I bought in bulk and chopped up. Of course, putting in my favorite jar. There's no need to defrost this once it gets to the warm vegetables. It defrosts really quickly. We're gonna put about 2 tablespoons in there. I think this is a great shortcut. When I have these fresh herbs on hand, I tend to use the dried ones less often, which come in single-use packaging typically. And also fresh herbs just taste so much better. So for the herbs that I reach for very frequently, I try to have them on hand diced in the freezer. And so the last step here is to add the sauce in and stir it all together and make the magic. I love using these small spatulas so we can make sure we get all that delicious sauce out and into the bowl. And now we're just gonna toss this all together and we're done. Oh, look at that. It looks so good. Okay. So there you have it, this delicious roasted curry vegetables with a tahini sauce. I think the other thing that this recipe is really good at showing us is that in our transition from being an animal-based eater to a plant-based eater, often the first step, I know this is what I did, is that I was like, okay, I was going to cook pork chops tonight and I'm not going to cook pork chops anymore. So I want to just, from that plate, unplug the pork chop and plug something in its place. And so that makes these plant-based, animal-like products really attractive. And while they're fine, and they certainly have a lower environmental impact than their animal counterpart, they are highly processed. So the more you start eating and loving these plant-based meals, the more you see that really the animal was providing a lot of our protein, maybe all the protein for the meal. And what you see is that protein now with a plant-based diet gets interspersed in our meal. So I have peas with protein, chickpeas with protein, and the sauce on this was tahini, which was also protein rich. And so you see, you sort of start really just reshaping and rebalancing your plate completely. Here we are at the end of our 7-day challenge. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. If you've actually followed me for 7 days, you probably have a refrigerator full of some delicious leftovers. I hope you've learned something, not just about cooking, but about the food system's impact on our climate. I believe that we can't change something we don't understand. And understanding climate change requires that we understand some basic thermodynamics. My hope is that the science we've learned in the kitchen during these 7 days, like specific heat and emissivity and thermal conductivity, will help us to better understand and improve not only our cooking, but our understanding of the Earth's energy balance and therefore our current climate disruption. Does it matter that I replace beef with lentils? Really? I would say yes, every little bit matters. While it seems like cooking is a tiny piece of the whole equation, there's a lot of us and we make these food decisions 3 times a day, every single day of the year. I hope this series has shown you that eating an earth-friendly diet does not lead to a bland and miserable diet. Exactly the opposite. The more we prioritize environmentally friendly foods, the more power we have over our food system, and it even improves our nutrition. We have power in our purchasing decisions. We control what grocery stores and food companies prioritize. Please don't abandon your family's cultural, traditional recipes. Retain these and pass them down as they're critical to our food stories. Thank you for taking the time to be engaged, and I hope you'll expand this 7-day challenge to a daily challenge. The kitchen is the perfect place to become an active part of the climate solution. I'm wishing you many days of happy cooking and many meals gathered around a table with people you enjoy. I plan to continue to post more videos, so please subscribe to this channel so you'll be alerted when there's more delicious physics to enjoy. Help spread the word using the hashtag Sustainable Cooking Challenge. Post pictures of your recipes and your experiences. Thank you so much.